The crystal vase shattered against the wall, missing the young housekeeper's head by inches. "You stupid, incompetent girl." Celeste Vaughn's voice echoed through the Hamptons mansion. "I said fresh lilies. These are from yesterday." The housekeeper, Maria, barely 20, was trembling, tears streaming down her face. "I'm sorry, ma'am. I'll get new ones right." "You'll get nothing," Celeste interrupted, her voice cold as ice. "You're fired. Pack your things and get out. Please, Miss Vaughn, I need this job. My family. I don't care about your family. Get out of my house." That's when Ruth Carter stepped forward. She was new first day, in fact. 30 years old, quiet, with dark eyes that seemed to see everything. "Actually," Ruth said calmly, "those are fresh lilies. I arranged them myself this morning, from the garden, like you requested." Celeste turned slowly, her perfectly manicured hand still raised from throwing the vase. "Excuse me?" "The flowers are fresh," Ruth repeated, her voice steady. "Maria followed your instructions perfectly. If you're unhappy with them, that's a preference issue, not a performance issue." The room went silent. The other staff members, 3 housekeepers, the butler, the chef, stood frozen, waiting for the explosion. No one spoke to Celeste Vaughn like that. No one contradicted her. No one survived it. Celeste walked slowly toward Ruth, her heels clicking on the marble floor. "Do you have any idea who I am?" "Yes," Ruth said. "You're Celeste Vaughn, fiancée of Adrian Blackwell. And you're someone who's been hurting for a long time and doesn't know any other way to feel powerful except by making other people feel small." Celeste's face went white, then red. "You're fired." "No," Ruth said quietly. "I'm not. I just fired you." "You can't fire me," Ruth interrupted gently, "because I don't work for you. I work for Mr. Blackwell, and until he tells me to leave, I'm staying." She turned to Maria. "Those flowers are beautiful. Leave them exactly where they are." Then Ruth walked past Celeste like she was invisible and continued with her work. Behind her, Celeste stood trembling with rage. And for the first time in 3 years, someone in the Blackwell household hadn't bowed to her cruelty. You just watched a woman do something no one else had dared to do, stand up to Celeste Vaughn. But you don't know why Ruth isn't afraid. You don't know what she sees that others don't. And you don't know what she's about to uncover that will change everything in that mansion. If you need to understand how one person's courage can expose years of hidden abuse, if you want to see what happens when someone finally says, "Enough," then stay with me. Because this story is about to show you that sometimes the bravest thing you can do is stand between a bully and their target, even when everyone says it's impossible. Hit that subscribe button. You're going to want to see how this ends. Now let me take you back to the moment Ruth Carter decided to take this job, to the reason she wasn't afraid of Celeste Vaughn. Ruth Carter needed this job, but not for the reasons most people needed jobs. She needed it because she'd been looking for someone like Celeste Vaughn for 3 years. Not Celeste specifically, but someone like her. Someone who wielded cruelty like a weapon, someone who terrorized people who couldn't fight back, someone who needed to be stopped. 3 years ago, Ruth had been a domestic violence counselor at a women's shelter in Brooklyn. She'd worked with survivors of abuse, physical, emotional, psychological, and she'd helped them escape, rebuild, reclaim their power. Until the day one of her clients went back to her abuser and didn't survive. Sarah, 28 years old, mother of 2. She'd been so close to leaving for good. Ruth had found her housing, job training, childcare support. But her husband, charming, wealthy, connected, had convinced her to come back, promised he'd changed, promised it would be different. It wasn't. Sarah died 3 weeks later. Her husband claimed it was an accident, a fall down the stairs. The police investigated but couldn't prove otherwise. He had expensive lawyers, character witnesses, a narrative that painted Sarah as unstable. He walked free. Ruth quit the shelter 2 months later, not because she gave up, because she realized something. The system only helped people after they'd already been destroyed. She wanted to intervene before that happened. So she started looking for positions in wealthy households, places where abuse often hid behind closed doors and expensive curtains. Places where staff saw things but were too afraid to speak up. Places like the Blackwell Estate. She'd heard the stories about Celeste Vaughn. Every domestic employment agency in New York knew about her. The fiancée who'd gone through 17 staff members in 3 years, who threw things, who screamed, who fired people on a whim, who everyone feared. Ruth had applied immediately. The Blackwell Estate was massive, 20,000 square feet, 12 bedrooms, indoor pool, tennis courts, gardens that required 3 full-time groundskeepers. Adrian Blackwell had made his fortune in pharmaceutical research. 40 years old, widowed young. His first wife had died in a car accident 10 years ago. He'd met Celeste Vaughn 2 years ago at a charity gala. She was 35, beautiful, from old money. They'd been engaged for 6 months. The wedding was scheduled for 3 months from now. Ruth's interview had been with the head housekeeper, Mrs. Chen, a woman in her 60s who looked exhausted. "I'll be honest with you," Mrs. Chen had said. "This is a difficult position. Miss Vaughn is demanding. If you can't handle criticism, if you're sensitive to raised voices, if you need constant validation, this isn't the job for you." "I can handle it," Ruth had said. "The last 3 girls quit within a week. One lasted 2 days. I won't quit," Ruth promised. Mrs. Chen had studied her carefully. "Why do you want this job? You're educated. You have experience in social work. You could work anywhere. Why here?" Ruth had chosen her words carefully. "Because I believe people who hurt others are usually people who've been hurt themselves, and I want to help." 1. Mrs. Chen had hired her on the spot. Ruth's first day started at 6 a.m. She met the rest of the staff, Maria and 2 other housekeepers, the butler Thomas, the chef Andre, the groundskeepers who worked outside. They all had the same look, nervous, exhausted, defeated. "Stay out of Miss Vaughn's way," Maria had whispered during breakfast prep. "Don't make eye contact. Don't speak unless spoken to. Don't question anything she says. Just survive." "What about Mr. Blackwell?" Ruth asked. "He's kind," Thomas the butler said. "Fair, generous. He treats us like humans." "Does he know how she treats you?" Silence. "She hides it from him," Mrs. Chen finally said. "She's different when he's around. Sweet, charming. It's only when he's gone that she changes." "Why doesn't anyone tell him?" Ruth asked. "Because the last person who tried got fired and blacklisted from every agency in New York," Andre said bitterly. "Miss Vaughn has connections. She'll destroy your career if you cross her." Ruth absorbed this information silently. "Just keep your head down," Maria said kindly. "It's not worth trying to fight her, trust me." But Ruth had spent 3 years learning that sometimes the only way to stop a bully is to stand up to them, even when everyone says it's impossible. Especially when everyone says it's impossible. Celeste Vaughn made her first appearance at 10 a.m. She was stunning. Tall, slender, perfectly styled blonde hair, designer clothes, the kind of beauty that turned heads. But her eyes were cold. Ruth watched from the kitchen as Celeste inspected the house, running her finger along surfaces, checking for dust, examining flower arrangements, finding faults that didn't exist. "Maria," Celeste's voice rang out. "These mirrors are filthy. Do you not know how to clean?" Maria rushed over. "I cleaned them this morning, ma'am. I can—" "Don't make excuses, just fix it." Ruth stepped into the hallway. "I cleaned those mirrors. They're spotless. Would you like me to show you the cleaning log?" Celeste turned, seeing Ruth for the first time. "And who are you?" "Ruth Carter. I started today." Celeste's eyes narrowed. "Mrs. Chen hired you without consulting me?" "Mr. Blackwell approved the hire," Ruth said calmly. That gave Celeste pause. She couldn't fire someone Adrian had approved without raising questions. "Well, Ruth Carter," Celeste said, her voice dripping with false sweetness. "Let me make something very clear. This is my house. These are my standards. And if you can't meet them, you won't last any longer than the others." "Understood," Ruth said. "And let me make something clear to you. I'm here to work, not to be your emotional punching bag. I'll meet every reasonable standard you set, but I won't tolerate abuse. Not of myself, and not of my colleagues." The hallway went silent. Celeste stared at Ruth like she'd grown a second head. "Excuse me?" "You heard me," Ruth said quietly. "I'm happy to work hard, but respect goes both ways." That's when Celeste had grabbed the vase of lilies and thrown it at Maria, and Ruth had stepped in. After the vase incident, Celeste disappeared to her private wing of the mansion. The staff gathered in the kitchen, staring at Ruth like she'd just walked on water. "Are you insane?" Maria whispered. "She's going to destroy you." "Maybe," Ruth said, "but she's not going to destroy you. Not anymore." "You don't understand," Mrs. Chen said, her voice tight with worry. "Miss Vaughn doesn't just fire people. She ruins them. She'll call every agency, every household, every connection she has. You'll never work in this city again." "Then I'll work somewhere else," Ruth said calmly. "Why would you risk that for us?" Andre asked. "You don't even know us." Ruth was quiet for a moment, thinking about Sarah. About all the women she'd counseled who'd been too afraid to leave, too afraid to speak up, too afraid to believe anyone would protect them. "Because someone should have stood up for you a long time ago," she finally said. "And I'm sorry no one did." Thomas shook his head. "Mr. Blackwell is traveling. He won't be back until tomorrow night. If Miss Vaughn fires you before then, there's nothing anyone can do." "Then I guess I have until tomorrow night to make a difference," Ruth said. Celeste appeared again at dinner service. Adrian was still traveling, so it was just Celeste dining alone in the formal dining room. Ruth was assigned to serve her. "Interesting choice," Celeste said as Ruth placed the first course in front of her. "Mrs. Chen must be trying to get you fired." "Mrs. Chen is trying to maintain a professional household," Ruth replied. "Professional?" Celeste laughed. "Is that what you call publicly humiliating me in front of my staff?" "I call it setting boundaries," Ruth said. "There's a difference between demanding excellence and abusing people." Celeste set down her fork. "You don't know anything about me." "I know more than you think," Ruth said quietly. "Really?" Celeste's voice dripped with challenge. "Please, enlighten me. What do you know about my life?" Ruth paused, measuring her words carefully. "I know that people who hurt others are usually people who've been hurt themselves," she said. "I know that cruelty is often learned behavior. And I know that someone who needs to tear others down to feel powerful is someone who feels powerless in other parts of their life." Celeste's face went very still. "You don't know what you're talking about." "Don't I?" Ruth asked. "Because from where I'm standing, I see a woman who terrorizes people who can't fight back, who hides her cruelty from the one person who could stop it. Who's so afraid of being seen as weak that she destroys anyone who might see through her mask?" "Get out," Celeste whispered. "In a minute," Ruth said. "But first, I want you to understand something. The people in this house are human beings. They have families, they have struggles, they work hard to survive, and you make their lives hell because it makes you feel strong." I said, "Get out." "What happened to you?" Ruth asked, her voice gentle now. "Who taught you that this was okay? Who hurt you so badly that you think you have to hurt everyone else first?" Celeste stood abruptly, her chair scraping against the floor. Her hands were shaking. Her perfect mask was cracking. "You have no right." "You're right," Ruth interrupted. "I don't have the right to know your story. But those people in the kitchen have the right to be treated with dignity, and if you can't give them that, then you need to figure out why." Ruth turned to leave. At the door, she stopped. "I'll be here tomorrow, Miss Vaughn, and the day after that, and every day until Mr. Blackwell returns. And then we'll see if you're brave enough to treat me this way in front of him." She walked out, leaving Celeste standing alone in the dining room, trembling with rage and something that looked almost like fear. Here's what destroys me about this moment. Ruth wasn't trying to humiliate Celeste. She wasn't trying to get revenge or prove she was better. She was trying to hold up a mirror, to show Celeste what she was doing. To ask the question no one else had dared to ask. Why? Because Ruth understood something that most people don't. Hurt people hurt people. Cruelty isn't born in a vacuum. It's learned. It's passed down. It's a survival mechanism that becomes a weapon. And the only way to stop the cycle is to make people see what they're doing. Not by punishing them, not by destroying them, but by asking, who taught you this? Who hurt you first? Maybe you've known someone like Celeste, someone who made your life hell, who seemed to enjoy your pain, who you couldn't escape from. And maybe you wanted revenge, wanted them to suffer the way they made you suffer. But what if revenge doesn't stop the cycle? What if it just continues it? What if the only way to truly stop a bully is to help them see the wound they're trying to hide? Subscribe if you believe that sometimes the bravest thing you can do isn't to destroy the person who hurt you, it's to ask them why they're hurting in the first place. Ruth was in the kitchen the next morning, helping prepare breakfast when Mrs. Chen approached. "Miss Vaughn wants to see you," in her private sitting room. The other staff members exchanged worried looks. "This is it," Maria whispered. "She's going to fire you." "Probably," Ruth agreed. "Then why are you smiling?" Andre asked. "Because I'm about to find out if I'm right about her," Ruth said. She walked to Celeste's wing and knocked on the sitting room door. "Come in." Celeste was standing by the window, her back to the door. She was wearing casual clothes, yoga pants, a sweater, no makeup, her hair down. She looked younger, vulnerable. "You're probably wondering why I called you here," Celeste said without turning around. "To fire me," Ruth said. "Or to try to intimidate me into quitting." "No," Celeste said quietly. "To ask you a question." She finally turned around. Her eyes were red, like she'd been crying. "How did you know?" Ruth stepped closer. "Know what?" "That someone hurt me," Celeste whispered. "How did you know?" Ruth took a breath. "Because I used to be a domestic violence counselor. I worked with women who'd been abused, and I learned to recognize the patterns, the need for control, the rage that comes out sideways, the way you target people who can't fight back." Celeste's face crumpled. "My father," she said, her voice breaking. He was very successful, very respected. Everyone loved him, but at home, she couldn't finish." Ruth waited. "He criticized everything," Celeste continued. "My clothes, my grades, my weight, my friends, nothing was ever good enough. And if I made a mistake, if I embarrassed him, if I was anything less than perfect..." She stopped, wrapping her arms around herself. "He never hit me. But the words, the constant tearing down. I learned that's what powerful people do. They make others feel small. That's how you stay on top. And now you're doing the same thing," Ruth said gently. "I know," Celeste's voice cracked. "I know I'm terrible. I know I'm cruel. But I don't know how to stop. Every time I see someone happy, or confident, or comfortable, I want to destroy it because I never got to have it." Tears were streaming down her face now. "Adrian is so good, so kind. He'd be horrified if he knew how I treat the staff, but I can't help it. It's like I need to hurt someone, or I'll fall apart." Ruth stepped closer. "That's not true. You don't need to hurt anyone. You need help." "I can't," Celeste whispered. "If Adrian finds out, if anyone finds out, they'll see I'm not the woman they think I am. They'll leave. Or," Ruth said, "they'll help you heal. This is the moment that changes everything. Because Celeste isn't a monster. She's a wounded person who learned the wrong lessons about power and safety. And that doesn't excuse what she's done. It doesn't make the pain she caused disappear. The staff she terrorized don't owe her forgiveness just because she was hurt first. But it does explain it. And understanding why someone became cruel doesn't mean you're weak. It means you're wise enough to see the difference between justice and vengeance." Ruth could have taken this moment to destroy Celeste, to expose her, to ruin her engagement and her reputation. And Celeste deserved consequences. But Ruth saw something else. She saw a chance to break a cycle, to stop the hurt from being passed down one more time. Subscribe if you believe that some people need healing more than they need punishment, because maybe the only way to stop cruelty is to address the wound underneath it. Adrian Blackwell returned home that evening. He walked into a house that felt different, quieter, tense. Mrs. Chen met him in the foyer, her face troubled. "Mr. Blackwell, there's something you need to know." "What happened?" Adrian asked immediately. "It's about Miss Vaughn and the new maid, Ruth. There was an incident." Adrian's jaw tightened. "What kind of incident?" Before Mrs. Chen could answer, Ruth appeared at the top of the stairs. "Mr. Blackwell, I need to speak with you, privately." Adrian looked between Ruth and Mrs. Chen, then nodded. "My study." Now, in the study, Ruth told him everything. The vase, the verbal abuse, the pattern of cruelty toward the staff over 3 years, Maria's tears, Andre's resignation, Thomas's quiet suffering. Adrian's face went from shocked to horrified to devastated. "Why didn't anyone tell me?" he asked, his voice raw. "Because she threatened them. Because they were afraid. Because you love her and they didn't want to destroy that." Adrian stood and walked to the window, his back to Ruth. "I had no idea." he whispered. She's so different with me. Loving, kind. I thought I was helping her heal from her childhood. She told me about her father, about the abuse. I thought our relationship was her fresh start. It could be, Ruth said, but not if she doesn't face what she's been doing. Not if she doesn't get help. Adrian turned. You want me to leave her? No, Ruth said. I want you to help her heal. But that means accountability. That means therapy. That means she has to admit what she's done and commit to changing. And if she won't, Ruth met his eyes. Then you have to decide if you can love someone who hurts others to feel powerful. That evening, Adrian confronted Celeste. Ruth wasn't present, but she heard about it from Mrs. Chen later. Celeste had denied it at first, then broke down, then admitted everything. Adrian gave her a choice. I love you, he'd said, but I can't marry someone who abuses people. So you have two options. You get help, real help, not just a few therapy sessions to placate me or we're done. Celeste had agreed to therapy. Individual therapy twice a week, trauma counseling, and she had to apologize to every staff member she'd hurt. If Ruth is willing, Adrian added, I'd like her to stay on, not as a maid, but as a household coordinator, someone who ensures everyone here is treated with respect. 2 weeks later, Celeste gathered the entire staff in the main living room. She looked fragile, nervous, nothing like the terrifying figure they'd known. I owe you all an apology, she began, her voice shaking. I've spent 3 years making your lives miserable. I threw things. I screamed. I fired people for no reason. I made you afraid to come to work. Her voice broke. There's no excuse for that. I was hurt, and I hurt you, and I'm sorry. Maria shifted uncomfortably. Andre looked skeptical. Thomas kept his eyes down. I'm getting help, Celeste continued. Therapy. I'm learning to deal with my trauma without taking it out on others. But that doesn't undo the damage I've done. She pulled out an envelope and handed it to Mrs. Chen. This is a fund, $50,000. To be distributed among the staff. I've hurt everyone who worked here over the last 3 years. It's not enough. It doesn't fix anything. But it's a start. She turned to Ruth. And Ruth, I owe you the biggest apology. You stood up to me when no one else could. You saw me at my worst and still believed I could be better. I don't deserve your kindness, but I hope someday I can earn it. Ruth stood. You're earning it now. By doing the work. By being honest. By trying. Celeste's eyes filled with tears. Why don't you hate me? Because hate doesn't heal anyone, Ruth said. I've seen what trauma does to people. I've seen how pain gets passed down like a curse. And I've also seen that the cycle can be broken, but only if someone chooses to break it. She stepped closer. You're choosing to break it. That's worth supporting. 6 months later, the Blackwell household was unrecognizable. Celeste's therapy was working. She'd learned to recognize her triggers, to ask for space when she felt overwhelmed instead of lashing out, to apologize when she slipped. She started a foundation supporting survivors of childhood emotional abuse, used her story publicly to help others. The wedding was postponed, not canceled, but delayed until both Celeste and Adrian felt ready. Ruth stayed on as household coordinator, but she also started consulting with other wealthy families, helping them create healthier environments for their staff. She thought of Sarah often, the woman she couldn't save. But now, she was saving others, one household at a time. One day, Celeste found Ruth in the garden. I heard you're leaving next month, starting your own consulting firm. Yes, Ruth said, it's time. Will you? Will you come to the wedding? When we finally have it? Ruth smiled. I'd be honored. Celeste sat down beside her. I still mess up sometimes. I still have bad days. That's being human, Ruth said. Healing isn't linear. Thank you, Celeste whispered, for not giving up on me when everyone else had. Thank you for proving that people can change, Ruth replied. That took more courage than anything I did. Here's what Ruth understood that changed everything. Punishment doesn't heal trauma. It doesn't stop cycles of abuse. It just creates more pain. But accountability combined with support, that changes lives. Celeste didn't deserve immediate forgiveness. The staff she hurt didn't owe her their trust. But Ruth gave her something equally valuable. A path forward. A chance to do better. To be better. to break the cycle her father started. And that choice, that decision to believe someone could change, transformed not just Celeste, but everyone in that house. The staff got justice, financial compensation, and a safer workplace. Celeste got healing and a chance to become who she could have been all along. Adrian got the truth and the opportunity to support real growth instead of enabling abuse. And Ruth proved that sometimes the bravest thing you can do isn't destroying the person who hurt you, it's holding them accountable while still believing they can heal. Subscribe if you believe that people who hurt others often need healing more than punishment. That accountability and compassion aren't opposites, they're partners. And that sometimes the most powerful thing you can do is break the cycle instead of continuing it. This is the story of Ruth Carter, Celeste Vaughn, and Adrian Blackwell. A maid who wasn't afraid, a woman whose cruelty was hiding unbearable pain, and a man who chose love with accountability over love with denial. Ruth didn't save Celeste by ignoring what she'd done. She saved her by exposing it and then offering a path to healing. Because that's what real courage looks like. Not revenge, not destruction, but the belief that even the person who hurt you deserves a chance to become better than they were, if they're willing to do the work. And Celeste was. The end.